All right, the 8-bit music has played, which means it is time for the XP Billionaires. I am your host, Ray Thegrim, and with me, as always, we have Irene Rogue and Sky Knight. How are you guys doing today?
Hi, super good.
Yeah, all good here.
Oh, that's awesome. It's been a good whole week of gaming, I think, for all of us, I hope. So let's just jump right into it. What's everyone been playing? Sky, let's start with you. What have you been playing?
Torment Tides of Numenera. It's so good. Yeah, this is my second playthrough, but I mean, they have a character who is basically a Tide Pod.
It like colored like a Tide Pod, or like you throw them in your laundry machine and your clothes come out clean.
I think a better explanation is in order here, Sky. Let's get a little more descriptive here.
Or do teenagers like to eat them?
No, my precious cinnamon roll.
So
No.
it looks like a Tide Pod.
No, it's basically, its name is, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but it's either or or something like that. And it's basically this blob which can change shape somewhat and be different colors. And it's very sweet, and it helps the protagonist feel what are called the tides, as in the title, which are basically in-game energies that are affected by your actions. So one of the things the Dear Tide Pod can do is show you like what option will have what tidal effect. And I love him. He's just so cute.
I'm trying to find a picture of him. How do you spell his name?
OOM.
I'm gonna go with. Oh geez, there's lots of Give me a minute. Oh my god, it's like it is. It literally just is a little blob with eyes.
I know, it's so cute.
Does it have a voice or no voice?
No, it just kind of makes these squishing sounds, but it draws on the ground sometimes.
Oh my god, it's cute and it draws on the ground and makes squishy noises. It's called Let's not.
Yeah,
let's go with the cuter pronunciation because it sounds adorable.
Good enough. What have you been playing, Irene?
So it's been a bit of a mixed bag over here, as it usually is at my place. I tend to have one or two games on the go, just because I tend to be I'm easily distracted, and sometimes I'm in the mood for different things. It's been a lot of Persona 5. Getting back into that. I forgot where I was, though, so I started over. Listeners, you're going to hear that from me a lot, because I often forget where I was and I will start over. Because I'd rather get a coherent narrative rather than, be like, oh god, what was I doing? Who is this person and why should I care again? I don't remember. And I'm really, that game is just so polished. I can't get enough of how it's got this quality baseline that's so great. But I will just say this one thing. Atlas, please let me date you, Skay. Like, really? It's 2018 current year argument. I shouldn't be, consigned to being one sexuality or another, especially in a game where it's all about, choices and how you interact with people. It would be really great to not necessarily have to date one of the girls, who are all great. I will totally give it to them. It's all great. It's just, I really like the crazy artist who forgets his wallet and, just randomly walks out into traffic.
Yeah. No, I don't. I personally don't think I'll ever not date Futaba.
Oh, I really like Futaba. I do. And this is the thing. I'm just saying, I really love. Don't get me wrong. It's not because I think any of the female protagonists in that game are bad or anything like that. And I mean, they're all extremely well written and complex characters, and I really like all of them. It's just I always have a soft spot in my heart for the weirdos, and in this game, that is definitely Yusuke. Mostly because of the thing he makes you do when you go to the church. I'm pretty sure you get thrown out for being blasphemous.
Well, that's not suggestive at all.
No, it sounds really suggestive, but you just end up posing like a doof.
Art.
And on the other hand, because it came out recently, I've been playing Diablo for the Switch. Because I really like Diablo 3, and that makes a really excellent portable experience because it's so mindless is a bad way to describe it, just because it doesn't necessarily, give it the credit it deserves. But it's simple, just kill everything on the screen. Repeat.
Sometimes that's just all you need.
Exactly. And for a portable game especially, it's perfect. It seems to be pretty hard on the battery though, I'm not going to lie. Just cuz there's a lot of, you're constantly mashing buttons and there's a lot going on, lots to render, lots of visual effects that you're constantly triggering. Like I decided this time around to go with Necromancer because I didn't actually play through the Necromancer the first time. And I'm really enjoying my goth chick who has an army of undead skeletons, and I have basically geared her to create corpses everywhere she goes so I can blow them up at enemies.
Nice.
I mean, what other use for corpses are there?
Well, when you kill enemies, they drop a usable corpse, but I've decided to gear a lot of my skills into dropping more usable corpses so that if I'm in a one-on-one boss fight, I can make my own stash.
Fertilizer? You asked what?
Yeah. Basically, I'm like, I just need more bodies so I can make them explode.
All right, Rafe, you're up.
Yeah, it has been a Akira Toriyama fest for me, actually. I've been playing Dragon Quest XI for a good while, but I got to a point like in the third chapter that's been very, very grindy just to lead up to the big. I'm going for the true ending, so it's so there's just a lot of grinding at this point. I'm dying in a lot of boss fights, so I need to do it, and that started getting a little tedious. So I decided to take a break and randomly put in another game with art also by Toriyama. I've gone a little old school and I've started Blue Dragon, which I haven't gotten too far in. I think I'm maybe like 1 or 2 hours in, but I'm really liking what they've done. I was actually really disappointed to find out that this was an Xbox 360 exclusive. I think it could have shone so much more on other consoles, but I think we did the research, and I think it was that Mistwalker had an exclusivity contract with Microsoft.
At least we assume. I don't think we can.
It might just be in the West as well.
Mm-hmm. I didn't see it released elsewhere in Japan though. So I was looking.
It and Lost Odyssey were 360 exclusives.
Which, by the way, I believe Lost Odyssey is getting a remaster that's going to not be an Xbox exclusive, if I am correct.
Okay, we got to do research on that, because if that's a thing, I'll wait to play it until then.
I believe. Don't quote me that it's not an exclusive, but I've heard that it's getting a remaster. Like Tales of Vesperia, which was initially an Xbox 360 exclusive, at least in the West, is finally coming to PlayStation next year.
Yeah.
In the West, so I'm really excited about that because I never got to play Vesperia, and people are going to be like, "Oh gosh, you didn't play the best one," but whatever.
Yeah, but Blue Dragon, going back.
Anyway,
to it,
sorry. Yes.
It's a whole lot of ridiculous in one go. Like the first encounter with the monster. If anyone was seeing any of my old Twitter posts from last week, my first monster encounter was called a poo snake. And that is exactly what it was. It was the Japanese, animated description of poo. And the top of the coil was a snake head. And it was pink, and it held a spear because it had arms and legs, as well as a mouth at the base of the poo.
So you were fighting a sentient poop emoji.
More or less. It's like if Ekans and Poop had a baby.
So, listeners, this has evolved really quickly from like highbrow sticking our pinkies out and drinking tea to poop.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Yeah. This is the power of the snob. But getting back out of the ridiculousness, the mechanics in the game, the actual character mechanics, when characters get their shadows, basically the shadows have a job class system. You get that traditional Squaresoft, Final Fantasy job structure. Only it's not on the characters, it's on their shadow monsters. Like they literally come out of their shadow. And I think that is a really cool thing. And the shadow designs are really neat looking too. I kind of like them a lot. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes.
Stuff.
Yeah. It's
it sounds very Persona-esque, and it's like you don't level up, your shadow does. But of course, this predates the Persona. Well, not predates.
No, it doesn't.
No, Persona's older.
Yeah.
But it's a similar concept.
Yes and no. The shadows were given to the characters by swallowing something. So it was a very, very mechanical process in how they got them. So instead of it just being something that was inside them all along, it's more, here's an egg, eat it. Now you have powers.
Man, I wish I could get powers just by eating eggs. I'd eat eggs all the time.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, yeah, no, all right. So that's our I guess bi-weekly check-in, just kind of see where we're at with what we've been playing. So I guess it's time to get on to the main event for today. So last week we were talking about what we felt defined an RPG. So today I think we're going to go a little bit more in depth into that to some extent by talking about, what we feel is the difference between the open world and the linear RPGs from days of yore, or even some of the more current ones. Because we've got a whole bunch of different options for what we can play with RPGs now, and it'd just be good to know, who does it best in each potential genre, what we like, what we don't like. So let's start with the open world RPG. What are some good examples of some really, really well done open worlds? Let's start with Irene.
Oh, me first, eh? Okay. So I've thought really long and hard about this. As our co-hosts know, I fly a little bit by the seat of my pants, but I promise I did put a little bit of forethought into this. So open world RPGs, especially now, are really starting to make a big. They're really starting to come out big in like the Western RPGs. So you're starting to see their influence even floating into stuff that's traditionally not necessarily, an RPG style like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when this series first started, it was purely a stealth action kind of game with maybe very light, some stats on your weapons, not a lot of like character building options. You pretty much get your entire repertoire almost immediately out of the gate, and maybe there'd be like some traversal skills that you'd learn later on that would help you jump higher or whatever throughout the story. Now with Assassin's Creed Odyssey, though, they're definitely taking like pulling a hard right into the RPG territory where you have level ups, you have a character building system, and they started this with Origin, but I think it's really hitting its stride in Odyssey, where it encourages you to explore and try new things, and it has some genuinely well written side quests. Like, and the story is genuinely interesting to follow. But at the same time, I feel that again the world is so big that you get lost in it a little bit, and it does suffer from the RPG open world RPG sort of like not kiss of death, but definitely a detractor is that you cannot control the pacing very well, which makes it difficult to really keep up that sense of urgency.
Right.
And it because I could ignore the main quest as long as I want, and nothing bad will happen. So
No, that's
it's more what I'm getting at. But they also included in this one those BioWare style romances, which will feed into my next point. Really good example of open world RPGs, Dragon Age Inquisition. Like you didn't necessarily have like the one contiguous map, but you had massive expansive areas where you could move from one area to another, find quests, explore, do whatever you wanted to, and everything that you did sort of helped solidify your power base as the Inquisitor, which I thought was really cool. And BioWare has always been, they've always had a very special place in my heart, and seeing Anthem kind of makes me nervous, but we'll see what happens when it comes out next year. Or is it next year that Anthem's supposed to come out?
will supposedly, but we'll see kind of how that goes.
Yeah, it's not
Um,
necessarily what they usually work on, though it seems to have some mechanics similar to Mass Effect, so I'm crossing my fingers. And again, another one, Mass Effect, right?
yeah.
Mass Effect was another great kind of open world style RPG where you could do what you wanted. But again, you don't necessarily, it suffers from a lack of pacing because you can ignore the main story and ignore any of the urgencies from the main story for very long periods of time.
Hmm.
Though you're
And
not necessarily feeling like you're wasting time. Like you're still engaged in other aspects of this world and doing quests that have, meaning either to your characters or the party or even just, some random villager. And
right.
getting into the side quest stuff, I wanted to give a little shout out to Witcher 3 as well, because if there was ever a game that wrote side quests well, it was Witcher.
It's true. There's a lot in terms of just like building on that to make them very interesting. But talking about the side quests, that actually leads me like with some of my choices too. Like for me, Horizon Zero Dawn was a huge influence for me for how they did it right.
Oh yeah, for
Um,
sure.
the storylines for those, like all of the side quests, I think in that regard, like the way the world was designed for Horizon, doing the side quest was part of the main story to some extent. Like it helped you really get a better understanding of what situation this world was in. And I think that really helped with making it feel good. The only time it felt really weird, and this is really, really kind of negative to that, is getting closer to the end and this is something that I think a lot of open world games suffer from, is when you get to a point in the story where there is a sense of urgency and it's time for you to do this right here, right now. And then I go spend 20 hours on other parts of the world.
Yeah, you got to clean
Um,
up all the side quests because the final boss is coming.
yeah, and like I mean that is a real story detractor. Another example I had that I only just thought of now, and I don't know why I didn't think of it before, is Yakuza.
Yeah.
In that regard, like there is so much going on in this one little town. Okay, I'm supposed to go meet this guy for a drink or to stop a hostage situation, but instead I'm gonna go and become a voice actor for an erotic video game.
Or help a
uh,
dominatrix be a better dominatrix in front of a bunch of children.
exactly. So as ridiculous as like the stories are, but this is going to the point where it's like there's so much going on and there's something that you absolutely have to do, but it's so easy to get sidetracked, and sometimes that detracts from the main story. Like there's a point like in every Yakuza game that I've played, from I've played Kiwami 2 and 0 currently, and there's just one point halfway through the game where I really just stop caring about the side quests because I want to know what happens next. And that is my and at that point, that above all else, I can go back and do other side quests at post game after whatever. I don't care if I ever want to go back to it. But like the story was so well written that the sandbox became less important.
Yeah, and getting back to your point, you raised a really good point talking about Horizon that I think applies to some of the examples that I brought up as well, where the side quests feel like they're not necessarily disconnected from the main narrative. Because in the side quest, you're doing world building, and I think The Witcher 3 was extremely good at that. Because despite, you're taking this random Witcher contract in order to go kill a werewolf, but you're getting an idea of, what your main character's life was like, why people hire Witchers in the first place, and it really helps build the settings. It's not like it's not lost in terms of like it's not a fetch quest where there's
Mm-hmm.
like go get me these berries and come back with the berries and I'll pay you for the berries. And I always found that because they took the extra time to like really think about what they could do with this quest and what they can get it to tell us about either this character or this place or just the world of The Witcher in general, it was very successful in not feeling like a giant distraction from the main plot.
Yeah, Torment's quests are handled very similarly, I find. Like there are a whack ton, particularly in the early game, of optional quests, but they're also closely related to to the place you're in and your current situation, that none of it really feels like a distraction.
And I just wanted to mention something because I brought this up earlier about how Assassin's Creed has changed significantly from the old days. So Assassin's Creed like is a prime example of like what I would call open world game staples. Like it's your bread and butter almost, right? Where
Hmm.
you've got like the go and do this, go and do that. Like not necessarily, and there are some quests that build on the narrative, but not really, and that's where you lose that pacing. In Odyssey, they tried a little bit more to bring it back towards, let's build the world a little more with some of these side quests, and they did, but they didn't necessarily let go of the open world random quests to go and kill some Athenian ships. Like, I get it. It's supposed to be like a games as service model, but I think it's seriously detracting from the narrative and the world that they've built using like the actual, story driven side quests. Like, there is a side quest that is, I almost missed my pants. I was laughing so hard. I don't want to get too spoilery, but essentially it revolves around this guy who is convinced that he's going to bring woe and death upon his parents. And the prophecy says that his father will scream to the high heavens and his mother will die bloody, right? So, and he wants to protect his parents by you getting his sword and shield so his parents can, like, strike him down. And in a roundabout way, the prophecy does come true, but not in a way you would expect. And it was really funny the way they did it. And I wish that, like, Ubisoft has some genuinely talented writers working for them, making those side quests. And I just feel like a lot of the open world busy work they've added is just, it's detracting from the experience rather than adding. But it seems like as we move forward, like the Assassin's Creed where you had the old Assassin's Creeds where you had the open world busy world work forever seems to be slowly solidifying into these, like, the trend is less open world busy work and more games like The Witcher, Horizon Zero Dawn, and things of that nature. Like, I haven't played Red Dead Redemption 2, but it's been getting some pretty solid reviews, and I doubt that they've gone full throttle into the open world busy work to get that kind of reception.
Right. No, that's great.
Anyway, sorry. Didn't mean to
No,
hijack the discussion.
it happens. Sky, do you have anything else to add?
Well, the one game I would like to mention here is Xenoblade Chronicles, which is basically, the fusion of, a JRPG with the open world element you mostly see in Western games. And what I think makes it work there, well, you can go off and do other things, etc. They keep the story fairly focused, and the side quests, well, many are typically short and easy to do, and you do one every once in a while, and and that's good. You move on, and it has some of the best world design, environmental design that you want to spend all your time combing these massive areas that are worth exploring simply for simply for the screenshots. Like, even in the first game, they're glorious.
Right, and the first one was on the Wii,
Yeah.
and like it really pushed that system.
Oh yeah.
But I think style over substance is a big thing there too. Like,
Yeah.
I haven't played Xenoblade very thoroughly, but even from like the latest Dragon Quest game, I think despite not being the graphically the most polished game out there in terms of like photorealism, its style is gonna last a lot longer than, say, some of the more what we would call the graphically accomplished games now. And I think Xenoblade definitely takes advantage of that, like, style over that technical polish that a lot of folks take for granted with, especially a lot of the Western RPGs. And I'd rather see them go like full blown into creating this just beautiful vista rather than try to go for photorealism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, these are some good examples, and I think that's gonna cover a lot of helping define what we really really like. Now we are slowly running out of time for this week.
Oh my god!
Yeah, we really kind of dove into this one, and I think it's been great. I think it's been quite good talking about it, but I think we might want to make this a two-parter. We've talked about the open world. I think maybe next week we can start the part 2, and we can talk about the linear RPGs that we like, why we like those, and then we can kind of start getting into the debate, like what we prefer, like what, which is the better choice.
Yeah.
I'm not sure there's a better or worse. It's just, it really depends on how the tools are used. Like, if you're gonna fill your RPG with busy work, then you might as well just go linear.
No, and I agree. And I mean, we can stick with the open, with a couple more questions. We've still got a little bit of time here. But
Oh,
when does a linear RPG become more open world? Because games like Final Fantasy have side quests. They have, you have extra tasks you can do before going to continue the story in some cases, going on the world map, seeing is usually a couple of extra things, bonus bosses, that kind of thing. At what point do we get to the point where it's considered an open world game?
I think
so
it's scale mostly.
for me, I think it's actually not necessarily a question of entirely scale, because you've got your Yakuza Kiwami, which is a fairly small scale map.
Well, no, I wouldn't call that small scale at all. It's merely dense.
Oh yes, but like it's not a huge map, you know what I mean? But what I'm
Yeah.
getting at more is, for me, an open world game is like, all right, here's your quest. Here's the map. Go get it. Like you get the entirety of the world is sort of like laid out before you at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you're allowed to go get yourself into as much trouble as you want. Find yourself a level 90 enemy and get your ass kicked
Yeah.
immediately out of the gate if you so desire. And I think that, like, barring like perhaps a short period, like a tutorial period, like in Horizon, where you were just within like the Nora lands, I believe that I can't quite remember the name of
Yeah.
the yeah. And when you leave those lands, like you're basically able to go wherever you want after that.
Yeah.
There's definitely some signposting, but like nothing's restricted. So I think perhaps that, to me, that's the true definition of an open world game. It's like, all right, well, you've done the tutorial section. Here's the whole world. Go get it.
Well, and I mean, portions of games are open world too, not necessarily, the whole game. I mean, like you look at, some games for certain parts of it will put you into an open space. I mean, this isn't an RPG, but, um, Grim Fandango in the Rubikava sequence, where they just give you a series of tasks and go, all right, here's the city, figure out how to get it done. And you go where you want, you achieve all these goals in whatever order you want, but other than that, the story is linear.
Yeah, there might be some like sections where you can do things in different orders,
Yeah.
which I know, like Dragon Age, like the original, like Dragon Age Origins, was actually pretty good at that. So like you would do your part where you were like you join the Grey Wardens, and then suddenly you have to figure out what your next move is in order to make a challenge on basically the throne in order to unite Ferelden against the Blight. And you're given just a series of tasks. You got to go talk to the dwarves. You got to go talk to the elves. You got to go talk to some other folks. And you're allowed to basically go do those things in any order you want.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the map's not necessarily all contiguous, but I don't think that's necessarily a requirement for an open world game. I think
No.
it's more of the like, here's what you want to accomplish, go do it.
Yeah.
And you're given freedom to sort of do them in whatever order you see fit, and you pick up stuff there's side quests to pick up along the way. Some of them will be deeply involved and hilarious, like I know Shale was a DLC character in Dragon Age, but like, oh my god, that was the greatest DLC character. Mostly for that one scene where, as you're leaving, so this character is a golem, right, and was frozen for a very very long time, and had a deep dislike for birds because of it. Because what do birds do on humanoid rock constructions that are still?
Ha.
They shit on them. So as you're leaving the village, Shale spies a chicken and turns it into paste, and then just shrugs at you when you turn around to look at him.
On that note, should we wrap it up?
Yeah, I think what was going to be a big discussion about linear versus open world is only going to get bigger. So we're going to continue this discussion next week. So as always, you can find me on Twitter at billionairesxp. Sky, where can we find you?
I'm at Sky Knight XP.
And Irene, where are you?
I'm at irogue_xp on Twitter. And And podcasties, if you're interested in seeing me stream a particular game for my inaugural Twitch stream, let me know. Just at me on Twitter. I'll totally take it into consideration. But I did just find out that .hackgu was $20 on Steam, so it might just be that one.
Ooh, that's good, especially the remaster having that 4th chapter. That was a good chapter. I can't stress that enough.
It was just it was like $16 on Super Sale. So I was like, you know what? I think I will buy this.
No. Good call. All right. So as always, you can find, like we said, you can find us on Twitter. You can also check us out at xpbillionaires.wordpress.com. And as always, if you like what you're hearing, please buy us more coffee. When you buy us a coffee, we match that same amount and put it in a piggy bank. I know we're billionaires, but that's a really big piggy bank, so I need to fill it a lot.
And unfortunately, like, you go to a store and you're like, hey, can I buy like stuff with this? And they tell you no, and then they call security, and it's the whole thing. We need this world's currency. They won't take my gil, essentially.
That's a real shame. All right. On that note, thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, they're primarily engaging with this with their ears, therefore they are listening.
Okay, well, you can listen to us next week. There we go.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Bye.